What the oil crash of 2020 is a sign of. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper. Today we're going to talk about how oil prices have just crashed and what that means for the economy as a whole and what we're moving toward when it comes to this entire situation that is causing an economic crisis to start to reveal itself. Oil prices have plunged to new lows, lower than they've been in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's starting to really cause some serious market disruption. Now, one of our situations that we like to talk about in the prepper community is the possibility of an economic collapse. And much more devastating than any of the other scenarios that we all know is going on in the world today are not nearly as important as an economic collapse. An economic collapse is the end of society as we know it. It's very similar to what you think of when it comes to the Great Depression. It means people are going to be poor, they're going to not have food, they're not going to have basic necessities, and the government's going to maintain way more power than we want them to in order to try to keep the peace and get people back on their feet. Now, really quickly, if you do like videos that discuss topics that revolve around SHTF and current economic topics, hit the subscribe button below because it helps the channel grow and it helps keep the message going out there as far as possible, okay? So, oil prices crashed big time Sunday night, like really bad. If you weren't paying attention, some of the Brent crude oil actually dropped down to below $30 a barrel, which, now that I'm out here in North Dakota living in the Bakken, where a lot of oil is produced in the US, I pay a lot of attention to it because it affects my business and it affects everyday life while we're out here, okay? So, what that means and what I'm understanding from the field, and something that maybe some of you wouldn't be aware of not being in this area, is that if oil is below $30 a barrel, it is basically not profitable to operate the wells any longer. There's a level or a threshold, you might say, where paying for crews and for labor and for parts and equipment and for maintenance of all these different oil wells and refineries and pump systems and everything else that they have out here no longer earn a profit once that barrel price reaches a certain level. And what I'm hearing from the field and from the guys who are out there actually busting their butts every day and making that oil come out of the ground is that $30 is basically the threshold. Under $30 and you're no longer to operate a well in a profitable manner. And that is a big problem because if they start shutting down wells, and they start shutting down refineries and everything else related to getting oil out of the ground out here, then the next thing you know is there's a huge economic recourse of people losing jobs, people not being able to afford their rent or their house. There could be foreclosures. It can affect the real estate market. It affects everything. Gas prices, utilities, basically everything. And not only is this whole shenanigan caused by Russia and Saudi Arabia arguing over who's going to set the oil prices right now based on production, but it's also based on the fact that a lot of manufacturing and a lot of travel has slowed down due to some other unforeseen circumstances that we've all been aware of for a while now. And it's causing a lot of issues when it comes to producing and maintaining the price, supply, and demand of oil. And now we're in a situation where countries are basically, especially those in the OPEC countries, are trying to artificially inflate the price of oil in order to bring it back up to a level that's profitable again. So basically, when they get into their little fights, what happens is that they decide to either stop producing in order to raise the price of oil up because suddenly demand becomes higher than supply, or one of the two arguing parties overproduces in order to drop the price so low that the other party has no other choice but than to agree with what they're doing in order to get prices back up to where they're also profitable. So it's kind of a ridiculous tango that these two different parties are dancing right now. And in the meantime, we're all going to suffer from the turmoil of it all, okay? We're not worried about the profitability of oil for the most part, right? The average person doesn't think about that. I just want to be able to fill my car with gas, and I want to be able to buy plastic products at the store, and I want to be able to take a trip if I want. But right now, it actually is really significant because when that oil dropped as far as it did, it caused the entire market to have a miniature crash. It basically dropped almost 2,000 points overnight. And when that happens, it's significant. And it's something that all of us as preppers and people who are prepared mindset type people need to keep an eye on. We need to stay informed, and we need to watch out for what's going on out there. There's already shortages going on in the world right now. There's already shortages of toilet paper. There's already shortages of hand sanitizer. But now we're talking about oil, a basic utility, something we need to heat our homes, something we need to run our vehicles, something we need to make plastic with, and everything else you can possibly think of runs on oil these days. And if that is getting to a point where production is going to be halted in order to artificially inflate the demand to make the price go up, or if it's going to be overproduced and become so valueless that it's not worth producing anymore, it's going to cause serious economic strain. And we already have economic strain. So this oil crash 2020 needs to be front and center of your mind, more so than some of the other big situations going on in the world, because unfortunately, oil is more important when it comes to trying to keep things moving and keep our, on-demand supply chain moving. It's very important to have our number one form of transportation being fueled. And unfortunately, right now, there's a lot of turmoil around it. So, as preppers, what can you do? Well, obviously, stay prepared, keep up on all the supplies, and don't go out there and, panic buy like everybody else, but make sure you're already stockpiled and already prepared with the right items that you need. But this is looking pretty bad because a lot of things have already been pointing to a collapse in 2020. There's already been a lot of events, let's say, that could lead up to a situation where one of the only ways to unseat a president that people might not like, whose track record is mostly based on the economy, is to wreck it. So I'm not saying that this is some kind of a behind-the-scenes situation that's going on, but it is also something a lot of people predicted for a long time would happen during this year, an election year, okay? So keep an eye on oil. It is not good how much power these countries and these OPEC entities have over our money, over our individual ability to pay for goods or to have jobs or to earn a paycheck. They're literally playing with people's lives right now just because they've decided they need to make sure the price is higher than what, necessarily it has to be. So keep that in mind. Never rely on one thing only. Don't keep your eggs in one basket, right? And make sure you're preparing today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't start, next week. You should have started years ago. You should have started yesterday. But if you haven't, start now. Make it happen. Start getting out there and getting some supplies and get some things together. Because not only do we have this other crisis going on in the world, but suddenly this is happening too. And honestly, an economic collapse is worse than anything else that could possibly happen. And it's going to lead to every other negative scenario you can think of, right? It's going to lead to war. It's going to lead to starvation. It's going to increase the likelihood of the spread of different pandemics. And we're going to have a lot of other scenarios on our hands that we wish we didn't have. So make sure you keep this front and center. Keep an eye on it. Watch those prices and watch what happens when the correction comes back, or if it keeps dipping and dipping and dipping. It's something we all have to be very aware of, okay? All right, and without anything else to say about the subject right now, the oil crash of 2020, that's it for Magic Prep.